Welcome to the Bytes podcast. Here we go.
Hello, happy Halloween, and welcome to the Bytes podcast, a show all about Disney video games, past and present. Welcome to episode 4. I'm your host, Clay, and today I'm joined by my co-host, Jeph.
Howdy.
How's
How
it
you
going?
Not
Good,
too
good.
Good.
Talk over each other all we want.
Oh, yeah. It's classic podcasting right there.
Yeah, man, it's another month. It is October. So, in fact, we are recording exactly on October 31st, which is happy Halloween to you then. So, yeah, kind of a little close to the first. I know we try to get these up on the first, but whatever, it is what it is. So
it's an organic process.
Exactly. We just let things flow, and we just go with the flow. So,
speaking of flow, there's a little bit of paint flow we're going to be talking about this week, isn't there?
Hey, I see what you did there.
Yeah, it was
Nice.
a really bad transition. Sorry, guys.
Yes. So basically, as me and Jeph were talking, earlier this month about which game we wanted to cover for October, I think we both kind of decided maybe a spooky game was in order for Halloween. And so we started thinking, I don't know if there's that many good, spooky, scary, Disney games out there. So we started kind of racking our brains. I thought of the game Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge, which was on the original Xbox. I suggested that one, even though it's not a very good game, but it is a game nonetheless. And then I think we also thought about possibly covering Castle of Illusion, which we will, but ultimately we're like, there's got to be something spookier. And then finally it kind of came to us, and that game is the Wii exclusive game Epic Mickey. And so we decided, hey, why not? Now's as good a time as any. Let's give this game a go. So just to start us off, we're going to jump right in and talk about what the heck is this game. All right, so real quickly here, we are going to briefly discuss basically what is Epic Mickey. For those of you who maybe haven't played this or only kind of know it by name, we're going to explain to you kind of the overall idea of what Epic Mickey is, even though it is kind of a tough beast to kind of pin down, and just kind of give you a little bit of the premise on it. So Jeph, would you like to try to tell the viewers at home what the heck this game is?
Sure. Yeah, so Epic Mickey came out in 2010, November 30th, I believe. It was developed by Junction Point Studios and directed by Warren Spector, who I believe is famed for, System Shock? I know Deus Ex, some other stuff.
Yep.
But published by Disney Interactive, of course. And basically, this game is a action puzzle platformer, I think, with a little bit of, people call it kind of like a morality system, kind of a...
Yeah.
Warren Spector loved to use the expression, was it like player choice matters or something? Choice matters.
Mm-hmm.
And basically this game is a story about forgotten characters in the Disney universe, and Mickey's quest to essentially redeem them. I think, is that a pretty broad summary?
Yeah, I'd say so. Can you think of any games that maybe would kind of relate to this, maybe in the similar category?
Off the top of my head, I would say it resembles a lot of 3D platformers in basic functionality. But it sort of like melds those, like say like a Banjo-Kazooie or a Mario 64 type 3D adventure. But kind of melds in a little more puzzle elements, more like Zelda would be a good comparison as far as like painting in things and taking out things. And we'll get into the mechanics a little bit later, but there's lots of puzzles that depend on manipulating the environment, and that just instantly makes me think of Zelda because that's a pretty common element in those games.
Yeah.
What about you? Is there any games that you kind of thought of while you were playing?
Maybe some similarities to Mario 64 here and there, just having specific, fetch quests, collectathon type things where you're going around trying to get things to unlock doors or unlock new areas and stuff. The paint and thinner mechanic, though, which we'll get into later, I don't know. There's not a whole lot like that, at least that I can think of. So it's, I would say that part's pretty unique.
Have you ever played Okami? I've never played it, but it made me think of that one. I think it's the one I'm thinking of. The one with the wolf on PS2. It later came to GameCube.
I have not actually.
Okay. It's the only thing that I can think of that's visually has like a paintbrush in it.
Okay.
But I don't know how similar mechanically it is.
Yeah. I'm sure there's other games that are similar, but as far as I know, this was unique to me. So. Yep.
And to me as well in general.
Okay. All right. Well, that should give you at least a good idea going in. This is pretty much a one of a kind, minus a sequel, game. It's very unique in and of itself, especially for the Mickey series or just Mickey games in general. There's some things that kind of call backs to old Mickey games, but it really is a bit different. And it's definitely the first 3D Mickey that we've talked about here on the show, so it should be exciting to get into. And so next up we're going to kind of hit some of our initial thoughts, maybe just kind of our initial experiences, or any history we have with the game. So let's go ahead and jump right into that. All right, so to go ahead and start us off with this, we're just going to talk about any experience we might have had with this game. I think we both have. This wasn't new to either of us. So, Jeph, why don't you take it away?
Alrighty, so basically my prior experience is that I got this game for Christmas the year it came out, so just like a month and a half after it came out. And I ended up getting the special collector's edition that came with a little 3D Mickey statue of him holding the paintbrush. And I think it had a DVD in there and some other little collectible things, I want to say, like maybe like a visual thing. I really can't remember, and I should have pulled it out before recording. But anyway, my experience with it as I played through it when it came out. I played all the way through it one time. And I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it at the time. And so we'll kind of go into the hows and whys and what works and doesn't work with the game a little bit later. But basically, I followed, like, prior to it coming out, I followed it extensively from like the point it was announced through its release, through the YouTube videos and promotional materials and all that good stuff, previews on websites, and I don't think I was still getting Nintendo Power at the time. I remember getting a Game Informer that had this on the cover, though, and it was kind of, I think that was like the announcement of it, if I recall.
It was. Yeah.
So, I followed it from that point on extensively. I'm a huge classic Mickey fan and even bigger Oswald fan. And this game was the first use of Oswald after Disney essentially bought him back from Universal.
That's right. Yeah, which is pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm. How about you?
Yeah, a lot of similarities, unfortunately. The first time I ever heard anything about this was in Game Informer, and I just remember seeing the opening or the front cover, which actually went onto the back cover, and it was just like a giant picture of Mickey standing in front of the ink blot guy with like the giant castle and some different things all around it.
Dark and foreboding.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It blew my mind immediately. I was like, I don't know what this is, but I need to have it, and I need this game.
Exactly. Yep.
And so, and just seeing some of the concept art that was inside the magazine, these like, robot versions of like Goofy and these creepy rundown destroyed versions of the theme parks. I was like, man, this really is going to be epic. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know if it delivered like that initial hype that I had, but I don't want to get it too far ahead. Also, like you, I did pick up the Epic Mickey Collector's Edition. I think, was it a GameStop only thing, or was it just?
Honestly, I got it for Christmas, so I don't even know. I don't even know.
It might have been. They might have just sold it everywhere. But I'm looking at a picture of it here because most of it I don't know if I have. I still have the figurine, which he's been through a lot. I think he's lost an ear, maybe both ears. He just falls and breaks, but I keep gluing them back together. So
yeah, mine just won't stay upright. I haven't damaged it, but yeah.
And so
very balanced.
Yeah, it's a cool figure. Like, it's really neat.
Right?
A couple things are maybe not as great. I still have the big box for it. It also came with a DVD, which unfortunately I don't know if I have that anymore. It might be in the box, but probably should have watched it, leading up to this. So shame on me. And it's probably on YouTube because this is 2017 and
sure
everything
it
is.
Yeah.
It also came with sticker decal things that you could put on your Wii and your Wiimote.
That might be what I was thinking. Yeah.
Which I think I put them on my Wii, which I normally never do, but I think I was just like, at that point I was like, whatever, it's a Wii, who cares?
Yeah.
There was also a different thing. There was like a paintbrush nunchuck.
Oh my
remember
God,
that?
I forgot about that. Yeah.
I kind of want one now, which is a little late. I should have bought it to play the game with it, but
yeah.
But unfortunately, didn't get that. There's also a controller charger from Toys R Us exclusively, where it's like the Inkblot villain guy, and he holds the Wiimote and it charges it, which is pretty cool.
Huh. I've forgotten about that.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Normally, I don't buy collector's edition stuff, but I think I was just so stoked for this game that I was just like, I need everything. And I probably had enough money at the time, and I was just like, I'm just going to get this. And so I ended up purchasing it. And I don't remember a ton because it was a bit while back. But all I do know is, unfortunately, I did not get very far in this game. And I don't know if I just got distracted by another game that was coming down the line or what. This was kind of a part in my life where I wasn't the biggest gamer. I'd kind of moved on to more adult things, but was slowly kind of getting back into it. So needless to say, I did not play very much of it up front. I think I got, just a small bit in, maybe a couple hours. And for whatever reason, I wasn't getting hooked. I wasn't really just digging it. It wasn't, I guess, what I was expecting, or I don't know. I just got bored or something. So I put it up. And unfortunately, I hadn't yet to return to it up until, us doing reviewing this game. And then finally I was like, all right, I need to play this game. I did not give it the time it deserved. I did not stick with it. Yeah, it didn't hook me, but I probably didn't give it a fair shot. And so, leading up to talking about this game, I decided I'm going to beat this game. And, I bought this collector's edition. I at least owe it that much. So I did play through the entire game this time around. Finally beat it. It took me about, what did I say? I told you it was like 11 hours, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And so, so I finally got through it. There were some ups and downs along the way, but I'm happy that I finally got through it. I did purchase the sequel. I know we're not talking about that right now. I've had it for the Wii U for a number of years and have yet to put it in because I always said, I'm not going to play this one until I beat the first one. So thankfully, I beat it. And so now eventually I can move on to Epic Mickey 2. So,
And on an aside, I'm glad that you have it on the Wii U because I have it on the 360, so it'll be a good topic of discussion when we get to that.
You got the superior console, so congratulations, sir. Maybe we could do that in the future. We could just split, if there's like a console release, we could try to split those up and work together.
Which is essentially what we did on Tarzan, although I think you kind of did both, but yeah.
Yeah. So something to remember for next time. So
indeed.
All right. Well, that is kind of our prior experience with the game, just so you kind of know where we were coming from with this. And now we're going to jump into the meat of this episode, which is where we're going to talk about everything that this game has to offer. And just so that we can listen to some more of this awesome music, we're going to cut to a music break, and then we're going to talk about some of this game. All right, we are back, and now it is time to talk about Epic Mickey. Welcome to the game discussion portion of our show. Starting off, we are going to talk about probably the most obvious and probably most appealing part of this game, and that is the look of this game. How does it hold up to any source material it might have? Which it does. What do the characters look like? Do they look right? Did they do a good job? How does the world feel? And all of that. I know for me personally, just kind of slightly starting us off, I think the visual part of this game is the strongest part. And I think that without it, it would really be a difficult sell. I don't know, Jeff, what are your thoughts just kind of getting into this?
I absolutely agree with you on that. One thing I will say, and it's just because of the tone of the game, it is a very dark and I don't want to say muddy. I mean, there's a little bit because it's on an older system at lower resolution, but some of it I'm pretty sure it's all intentional. It's kind of just it's meant to look like a wasteland, and that's what the main locale of the game is called. Again, like we mentioned earlier, it's the Forgotten Disney, and so it's conflicting to me. Like, I think it looks amazing, and the art direction is absolutely on point. But it's like a weird juxtaposition for a Mickey game where, especially with all the previous ones, you just expect, bright and vibrant and certain things that you do expect from a Mickey game, as far as characters and other things. It's all kind of thrown into a warp and spit back out in a slightly uneasy way, which is phenomenal. It's great. Which I sound like I'm contradicting myself. But it's just a little bizarre. I don't know. What did you get from it, from, the kind of the overall look and, I guess not feel, but the overall look of it?
Well, to start it off, I think it's worth mentioning that this is on the Wii, so we're not into the HD stuff yet. So this is still, your standard def. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to see, game footage. It's still rough around the edges, pun intended.
Yeah.
It still has a little bit of pixelation to it, but obviously the majority of this game is overall pretty dark. Which is why we thought it would be a good choice for Halloween. Yeah. And obviously it's very intentional. The whole point of this game is kind of the opposite of what we think of when we think of Disney. It's dark. It's not like demented or like,
no,
overly,
it's not quite Burton-esque.
Right. But it's kind of lingering just maybe a little bit, in that direction. Starting off, I keep saying starting off. I've started off like 5 times. I want to talk about Mickey real quick because I think he's the focus here. What I get hung up over the white face thing. Yeah,
it was a weird choice to kind of go with the. I think the idea was that it was going for like the black and white Mickey,
right?
The one that Oswald would have known, because that's kind of the huge story beat.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's hard to tell if that was Walt's intent or, a Byworks or whoever at the time when he was black and white, if he was meant to have a white face or if he was always meant to be flesh toned like he became when they hit color.
Right.
I'm trying to remember, because like the band concert is the first color one, and I don't think he had a completely white face. Did he? Maybe he did. But what most people think of is Fantasia Onward, which is only, 5 years later.
Yeah.
Where he's kind of got a peachy tone to him. So yeah, it's a little weird, and the black pupils rather than the the Fantasia pupils, where he has the outline of the eye and then the pupils move around inside of it. So it's definitely going for the 20s and 30s style Mickey,
right?
And in 3D, which is bizarre. It works, and Mickey's facing away from the camera for the bulk of the action. So you don't see that a lot, although you do see it in all the cutscenes.
True.
All that. So, and you know what? We didn't even talk about the cutscenes visually.
Right.
We can get into that in a little bit. But yeah, as far as Mickey goes, he works, and they did well with the 3D model. But yeah, like the white.
That was the only part that bothered me. Like, I think his skinny arms and legs, Like, I think that's cool. That works fine.
Squash and stretch when he jumps. And
right.
all that is great.
Yeah, I love it. And I think I know we're not talking about the controls. He controls well. He feels fluid. It's not, really strict and, all that stuff. So it's just, the white facing kind of weirded me out. But
yeah.
But I've been playing all these other games where he has, the tannish skin, whatever. So I don't know. I was curious what your thoughts were, if it was something that really bothered you or not.
It didn't bother me a lot, but it was something I definitely noticed and kind of felt off, but understood why they kind of went with that, I think. Going back to the cutscenes, they're presented in an art style that's kind of looks like concept art. If you're familiar with Disney, kind of like Mary Blair's kind of concept art, where it's very distinct and I don't want to say blocky, but it kind of has sharp edges, and kind of watercolored colors.
Right.
So it's like animated comics with text rather than speech. Just kind of makes grunting sounds. Although the cutscenes, those are half the cutscenes, and then there's a few that are like CGI rendered cutscenes. So
yeah, I think I noticed those mostly at the beginning and the end, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah. And those look really good. Like, obviously I understand they probably couldn't do that for every scene, but
right.
It would have looked pretty cool if they could have.
I remember seeing the opening cutscene on YouTube before the game came out, and it was just like blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, I can't wait for this.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. If they had had a bigger budget, it could have been pretty cool. Yeah, as far as the 2D cutscenes go, though, I think I kind of like the art style on them.
I really do. Yeah, I like it too.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's hard to explain because I'm not really an artist, kind of the style it is.
Yeah.
But I feel like it works fine, because sometimes in games when they have different cutscenes that kind of have a different feel than the rest of the game, it takes you out of it. But for the most part, I didn't really feel like it took you out of it. So
yeah, I think it works extra well in this specific case because we are familiar with all of these characters as 2D characters. So it works really well because there's not anything jarring with it. It's like, oh yeah, that's what I expect Mickey to look like, or whatever characters in the cutscene.
Right.
Maybe even more so than seeing them in 3D, although I don't think any of them really look bad in 3D. There's certain characters that are alternate versions, like Goofy, Donald, and Daisy are animatronic, but they still look like how they're supposed to look. But like the mindset of the game, or the lore of the game, is that Oswald was trying to build friends for himself to be equal to the actual Goofy, Donald, and Daisy, and these were just like failed animatronics that he Frankenstein together. And I thought that was really cool too, and the designs on those is excellent.
Right.
Animation.
Yeah. So back to kind of the overall art style, as we mentioned, this area that Mickey is in is a rundown, rejected version of, I don't know, a mixture of what Mickey knows and for some reason like the Disney parks that we know.
Yeah.
And
heavily relies on the Disney parks, actually.
Which is weird because there's not really a movie where Mickey runs around in the parks. So
no,
you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like,
yeah, it's supposed to be all of Disney, but I think Warren Spector's love of the parks and the layout of the parks he's like, oh, that would be a great world,
right?
So yeah, it does kind of go against what you sort of think might be, but yeah,
but it works, and it's totally fine, and I love it. But I'm just kind of looking through some of the footage here and just trying to think of common themes. Like, what are we seeing a lot of in this game? And the more I look at it, the more I realize it's just a lot of metal and, exposed, wires and steam coming out of, pipes and broken down things. I don't know. It's just
a lot of mechanical visuals.
Yeah. Like almost steampunk, but not really kind of thing.
Just about, but not quite. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting observation because it's absolutely that really summarizes it well. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like if you know the Disney parks, you know that it's all just a film set where the facades exist, but then everything behind that is just steel beams and wiring, and it's all an illusion. So
yeah,
seeing kind of under that in this wasteland where it's half finished things and all that,
And thankfully, that's not everything to this game, because one of the core mechanics, as you mentioned, is like we get to go around and paint things back to a more cheerful and colorful, look. And so otherwise it would just be super drab and like gross the whole time, and it would probably get much older quicker, I would think. But Mickey's running around, adding, more color to the world. And so depending on the area, maybe more than others, but
I was going to say that.
It definitely adds some contrast once you kind of start going like a crazy person. But really, other than that, most areas don't really reward you for like throwing paint down. It just kind of makes things look better. It makes it a little more colorful and happy and all that stuff. So, which is cool. Yeah, overall, I like the visual art style. Not just like, oh, we're going to go in this direction, but just kind of how it all looks. I think for a standard definition, Wii game, I think this looks pretty great. I don't know. I couldn't really like tell you compared to other games how this, stacks up as far as graphics go, but there wasn't a whole lot while I was playing through this. I'm like, wow, that looks terrible. I can't believe that's in this game, For the most part, I was overly, pretty happy with how everything looked.
Yeah. For me, the only complaint would be that some of the textures are just a little too low resolution. And I feel like it was almost to give them a painterly look and also deal with the system limitations. But there's just a few that, when going through in such a dark environment, they looked a little muddy. Specifically like Mickey Junk Mountain?
Right.
There's a lot of Disney memorabilia kind of strewn about, and it's really cool, and we can talk a little more about that in the gameplay section. But like the one I'm thinking, there's like an NES and Super Nintendo cartridges, and it's like you can you can tell what the game is, but it's definitely a little blurrier than
it's very blurry.
I would prefer it to be. So, just a few things like that, but in general, the character textures and the world textures are generally good. And very well done and well blended. I don't recall seeing a ton of seams or other, unsightly things.
Right. Not to beat a dead horse, but I think there's at least one more thing visually. We could probably talk a ton more about it. Is the, I don't even know what they're called, but the little like movie short side-scrolling parts of the game.
The film reels or
the film.
Whatever.
Where you jump into the projector screens. So basically all of these are referencing real life, Mickey shorts. I think the majority of them are
similar
Mickey.
To Mickey Mania, kind of.
Very, yeah. In fact, I was playing it and I got to Steamboat Willie at the beginning, and my wife was like, "You've already played this game." And I was like, "No, this is different." She's like, "Well, it's pretty similar." And I was like, "Yeah, at least this part is. It's pretty much another Steamboat Willie, and you're Mickey, but you don't look black and white and old or whatever." But I thought these were pretty cool. In fact, I think in some of the later ones, the kind of the 2D but with the 3D character things, like I don't know, like there's one where you're in a boxing, the robot is going, he's boxing, and you're moving in the crowd in front of the boxing match, and there's these characters that are like jumping up in the air excited for the boxing match, and you're just kind of hopping over them. I don't know, I just remember like thinking like, this is really cool because it's like it feels like a pop-up book.
That's a good way to explain.
And obviously you're on a 2D plane, so you can't, you can only move left and right, up and down. But I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it looks very 2D, but you can tell that these characters have some depth to them. So
the art direction in those is really good because it's designed to look more like the cartoon.
Right.
It's a little less detailed than maybe the 3D environments or the fully 3D, because they are rendered in 3D. But I'm thinking like through the looking glass, the cards and the globe and all that, they all look great, and they all look very much like how they looked in the cartoon that they're based on. So I really loved these. I think their use of them was a little undervalued and over abused.
Definitely.
Because they're used essentially to go between areas in the game, and sometimes you just have to go back and forth, and it gets cumbersome. It would have been better to have them as one-offs, and then maybe just as a shortcut later on, and give you the option to play them as like a bonus. But it's they tried something different, and it was cool, and it was a nice added thing that they didn't have to do. So
it
was cool. I enjoyed those.
Yeah, and I know we like to review the side-scrolling Mickey games on here. So it's kind of a cool thing. Yeah, I don't think they were like overly. I'm getting to the gameplay part. We're talking about the visuals here. Sorry.
Yeah.
Overall, though, I think those levels, the little side-scrolling ones, are very true to the source material. I mean,
absolutely.
if you go back and watch them,
very.
they have like the same characters. A lot of the background stuff that's going on is all pulled from it. A lot of the enemies or doors opening obstacles, all that stuff is usually pulled right from the short. So
yeah, and then the animation for them is often very close, if not perfectly on with what the animation may be, like one little loop in the short that it's from.
Yeah.
So, yep, definitely a fan of the visual look of those, and we'll talk a little more about the gameplay of them down the road.
Other than that, the user interface is fine. The menus are kind of whatever. I don't think they were like too much to write home about. But as far as like the heads-up display, what you're seeing on the screen, up in the left corner, you got a picture of Mickey, which it has kind of like a Banjo-Kazooie thing going on, where depending on how much health you have or whatever, different face. And then you have your health, which is just red dots. And then there's this meter thing, which I'm hoping you can speak into, because I'm willing to admit I don't fully understand how it works. And I have a hunch, but I don't fully know.
I can tell you that having beaten both the first and second game, I still don't understand fully how it works, but I understand what it's supposed to be. Essentially what it is it's called your guardian meter. And depending on your play style and how you choose to use your core mechanics, the paint and the thinner, you will fill up that meter based on if, let's say, you start converting a bunch of enemies with the paint to be, and this gets a little bit into gameplay, but I'm just going to explain it for the sake of what the bar is for.
Right.
If you convert enemies using paint to be your allies, and they get the little floating happy Mickey heads over them, and you start filling in missing sections of the level with paint, you will fill up that meter. And I'm sure it's not arbitrary, but there's a certain amount of stuff you need to paint or fill in before each of those, I think it's 3 meters, will, let's say, turn blue. And in that case, you get these guardians that will start orbiting Mickey. There's some sort of gameplay mechanic where you can use them to get hints, and I don't know if it's like you have to push a button or if they just kind of, when you're near something, they kind of float over to it.
You hold your Wiimote.
That I don't understand.
You hold your Wiimote like directly up in the air, and then they make like a direct path to where you're supposed to go.
Yeah,
which
they never use that.
Some NPC told me that, and so I knew what they did, but I didn't. But then they would like disappear, and I'd be like, "Where did the little guys go?" And then they. Right, and then
convert more stuff. Yeah.
Right, and so I guess that whole mechanic just never got through to me. I don't know if it was communicated and I just skipped through it and didn't read it, or if it just was not properly communicated well. So
I wish I would have known better about it, because there was a few times where I just got stuck and didn't know what to do in the game.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have known, because I'm sure that would have helped.
Definitely.
The opposite of painting is obviously thinning, and so if you thin out the level and you kill enemies with paint thinner, like you'll get the green bar and the green guardians, and I don't know if they're any different, like if they react differently or do something different. Like I really don't know.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, that's underneath the health in the upper left corner.
Right.
What's in the rest of the UI?
And then basically all we have left are on the left and right side at the bottoms. We have your paint and thinner gauge, which just tells you how much you have left.
Yep.
And then eventually, as you get further in the game, there's, I think, some additional stuff that comes when you get more power-ups, but I think they kind of come and go. But, your additional things that you can drop, but not as important. Those are really the main things. But I like it. It doesn't cover up the whole screen. I can see the majority of what's going on. The camera is a bit of a beast in this game. It's something you got to try to tame. And so not having a lot of stuff covering up your screen is good. So I was happy with it. It wasn't distracting, and it was there and helpful when I needed it. So
agreed. A couple other points on the UI. When you collect things, like the e-tickets is one of the collectibles in the game. kind of a currency. Those just appear at the top of your screen with a count and then disappear. So that's nice. Very Donkey Kong Country or other games that utilize the kind of show what you need when you need it and then get rid of it. I thought that was great. And then when you're kind of going from quest to quest, things will pop up, I think, at the bottom, middle, and then kind of tell you stuff. And then the last thing, and this one is kind of a detractor for me personally, but it's kind of because I'm a visual snob, is the pointer. The pointer icon it's fine, but it jitters or whatever. It doesn't refresh at a consistent refresh rate. I think it's related to the frame rate of the game itself. And this is always something I noticed with third-party Wii games versus Nintendo-made Wii games, whereas I'm pretty sure every Nintendo-made Wii game and even the Wii menu, the cursor is stabilized, runs at 60 frames a second, and is smooth. It doesn't jitter with your hand, just minor shaking. This one it doesn't update as frequently, so when you're moving it fast, you kind of get kind of like a flipbook type thing where it kind of jolts from one location to the next without kind of a smooth transition. I don't know if you notice it, because I know you say you don't see differences in like frame rates and stuff as well. So I don't know if it bothered you as much. Did it?
No, but I mean, I did notice a couple times that there were frame drops. It was especially when there was a lot of enemies on the screen and a lot of like projectiles kind of being shot at me. I definitely noticed it then. So but nothing as far as the cursor goes, I guess. But that's something fair to point out. I guess I didn't think about that. So
yeah, best thing I can say is if you really want to get a good comparison, play this game for 5 or 10 minutes and then pop in Mario Galaxy and then use that on-screen cursor, and I think you'll notice the difference right away, because that's exactly what happened to me this week. And it's just like, ooh, yeah, not quite as good.
No, that's probably very accurate, I'm sure. So
yeah. Anyway, anything else with the visuals? I think we've kind of talked them up and we're kind of getting deep into the show already. Yeah.
No, just great overall art style. Some of the bosses and different, parts of the game that are references to real areas just are so cool. And I think it really comes clear when you look at even just the concept art for this game, and some of the things you can unlock are concept art. And I just think that they did a really cool job taking things from, theme parks and different shorts and bringing them to life. So, but I'm being redundant. So other than that, I think, 2 thumbs up for me on the looks. A couple little negative things, but visually overall is really good.
Agreed.
So next up is the sound and music of this game. How does it sound? Is the music good? Do you enjoy it? Does the sound design faithfully represent, old Mickey games? Does the music fit properly? How's the quality? All of that. So, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. I'm almost torn on the music in this game. I like most of it, and there's ones I like more than others, but there's some that are just so gloomy and depressing and kind of like I think in a minor key or something's just sort of downer about them. And it obviously works for the environment it's supposed to be, but sometimes like this game, and this kind of goes back to my talk of the overall look of the game. For me personally, sometimes playing this game just kind of gets me down. I just feel like it's like a living version of Eeyore. It's just like very negative.
Right.
I don't know if that analogy works, but it's just sort of what comes to mind. I don't hate it, and it's like I really like in the opening sequence when you're in kind of the castle. If I'm thinking of the right game, because I played Epic Mickey 2 recently too. They play a little weird version of the Sleeping Beauty theme,
right?
And, I think that one for sure is in like a minor key, and it's cool to hear familiar tunes. I think in Small World they do a little bit of that.
Right. Yeah.
And a few other places in the game. And it's really cool to hear familiar tunes kind of in a weird, changed, kind of sad, forgotten atmosphere. So it's cool. And then other songs that are just sort of original or for the game they're fine. I don't feel like there's a ton of memorable ones other than like the title theme And like the Mean Street theme kind of gets stuck in my head, but it is a little too short and repetitive for me. I don't know. What are your thoughts on the music? And then we'll jump into the sound design.
So the guy who composed this, his name is James Dooley.
Okay.
Which, to be fair, if you haven't heard of him, I mean, he's around, but he's not. I guess he works for Hans Zimmer. He works as
okay.
he's in their studio, and so he's done a lot of co-composing with him. He's done a couple other video games here and there. But honestly, the big thing, at least that we're going to be covering, is he does all 3 Epic Mickey games, which would be the sequel and then the 3DS DS one, Power of Illusion, Epic Mickey. So unfortunately, he's not going away anytime soon. So no, not unfortunately, but I think it could be better. Like I think that they could have found somebody, even of higher caliber to do this, but I still think that overall it works. I think it does its job right. It's dark when it needs to be, and then Mickey shows up and looks at the Walt Disney statue, and then it has this like really pretty piano thing, and then all of a sudden he notices, wait a minute, who's holding his hand? That's not me. And then it gets really dark, and it's got some orchestra sounding stuff to it, and so honestly, I think it could be a lot worse. I do agree with you. I think the main theme is probably its strongest, melody wise. There wasn't a ton that stood out like, wow, this is breathtaking
or catchy.
Right. But I don't think it really distracted too much. Now, as far as the side-scrolling parts go, I assume the majority of this is pulled from the original music.
Seems like it. Yeah, definitely Steamboat Willie was.
And so I don't know about the others. Like, I'm not a professional when it comes to this stuff. I don't think they redid it. I think it was just easier for them to use the original music, but I could be wrong. Maybe they just redid it and used some specific
I'm not 100%
patches.
sure on that. Yeah.
I don't even know how we would find that out. I guess you just have to play them side by side and try to determine.
See if certain little clicks and pops are in there.
But we're not that crazy.
We're not.
But
and it's like they're suitable.
And
the best way I could explain this is it's suitable music, but it's not anything to write home about.
Totally. And I'm glad they used the old music from the old shorts.
I
think they reused some of them on multiples, where maybe certain ones didn't have as much music. I could be wrong.
That could very well be. Yeah.
At least they didn't try to put like new music in it. So
right, which is one of our discussion points in our Mickey Mania talk. So yeah, it was good to see that.
Yeah. So, I'd say that's it overall for the music. I think it's dark and it works.
Yep.
I feel like I say that too often on music. It's either amazing or it works. I'm sure there's some terrible music out there, but usually
I'm sure there must be.
We'll find it one of these days.
I'm sure we will.
But so other than that, we have our sound effects. We have some slight voice work. Really, not a whole lot. Mickey's not usually a big talker when it comes to video games. So he just makes his occasional sounds.
Yep. I feel like in environmental sounds, there's nothing that really stood out as being like too repetitive or anything. It's definitely not the case for the sequel, but we'll get into that later. Yeah. And then the narrator at the beginning or whatever is good.
Yep.
The little audio blurbs and sound effects are very kind of classic Disney here and there, and then kind of more modern gaming conventions with like springing up on stuff. And it all works well in my opinion. It was, I wouldn't say masterfully done, but it was very faithful to the old Mickey cartoons. And in that regard, it's not bad.
Yeah, and you could tell they brought people in like Jim Cummings to do Pete, and I can't remember who does Mickey. You probably would know, but
at that time, I can't remember if the previous guy had died or not.
I got you slipping, bro.
I know.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
Usually have it on the tip of my tongue.
But it all sounded like the real people. It didn't feel like they had brought in a bunch of
Disney's very, very particular about that actually.
Yeah, and so it could have been Wayne Allwyn, Brett Ewan, Les
It would have been
Perkins.
one of those two. No, it would
Okay.
have been one of those first two. Whenever Wayne died is when he stopped being Mickey. So Brett came in right around this time, though, and this could possibly have been one of his earlier things.
Well, Wayne died in 2009, according to this.
Okay. So pretty good chance it was Brett,
Right.
but not 100% sure on that. It
Yeah.
could have been that they recorded the audio earlier or used samples that he'd already recorded. So not sure on that. That would be something fun to look up for later, maybe for the next one.
It doesn't have him listed. It has all the video games he's done in it. I don't see it on here. It looks like his last game was 2008. So it might not be him. So.
Yeah.
But anyway, I could get sucked down that rabbit hole for hours, so we should probably
for real
get out of there because I'm like looking at, he did this. Ooh, he did that.
Yeah.
So other than that, yeah, every now and then it seemed like every time I jump, Mickey'd be like,
yeah.
Like it was always something. And I kind of get annoyed with that, like with
Do
any
you?
game.
Okay.
Even like Mario Odyssey recently, I'm like, shut up, Mario. You don't have to say something every time I jump.
It's an interesting thing. That's what drives my wife the most crazy, and she can't watch me play platform games is for that very reason.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it's less annoying when you're the one playing for sure.
Agreed.
But then when you're sitting there and you're just listening, it's like, but I don't think that Mickey did it every action, so they had it set to, not everyone. So that wasn't terrible. It could have been worse. So
totally. Okay. Yeah.
Other than that, nothing that really stood out, with the sound and effects and all that. So I think we've covered that pretty good.
Yep.
And so we can move on, which is to the gameplay, which is probably one of the bigger parts of this. Actually, I'm thinking before we hit gameplay, let's skip. I don't know why we have this next or after that. Let's do the story real quick before we get into, because then we're going to go into some of the levels and the mechanics and stuff. So I think we should just real quickly run through the story of this. I know you kind of hit on it earlier, but if you wouldn't mind, maybe just kind of, if you don't mind going into a little more details on the story of this game.
Yeah, and I can speak more to the beginning than to the end, just as I didn't play all the way through to the end this time. But as far as setting the stage, essentially it starts with Yensid, who is the wizard from Fantasia with the blue, pointy, iconic Mickey hat, working in his workshop, building Disneyland. It is a 3D model. Mickey has fallen asleep through the looking glass, the Alice in Wonderland, and goes through the mirror, starts kind of screwing around in Yensid's workshop, and spills a bunch of paint thinner and this like ink blot thing, right, onto this thing, this 3D thing that model. There we go.
Yeah,
that's the word. Onto this 3D model that Yensid had been working on. He freaks out, kind of runs back, and goes back to sleep, or kind of goes back to his room. In that time period, we're assuming that was like 1929, like when Mickey, or 28, when Mickey debuted.
That's right.
Because then there's this little montage of Mickey then, like the calendar flipping by, going through the years from November 18th, 1928 to, 10 or 20 years down the road, when Mickey's like super famous and, really well known across the world. And we come to basically find out that what Mickey did is screw up the lives of all these other toons that lived in this environment, and they became forgotten. And essentially Oswald is the one that took the biggest toll, because he was Walt Disney's famous creation at the time in 1927, and strictly away from like the actual legalities of what actually happened. The idea here is this is the lore of why Oswald became this forgotten mascot, whereas Mickey became this famous one, was because Mickey screwed it up by pouring paint thinner on his home. At some point, Mickey goes back, and this is where it kind of gets fuzzy for me. So he goes back, and he ends up getting sucked into the world, I think, by the ink blot.
Yeah, the blot is like lingering over his bed.
Yeah,
and then he
there
just
we go.
grabs
That's
him.
what it was.
Yeah,
he pulls him back through the mirror.
Pulls him through. Yeah.
Yep. And thus begins Mickey's journey, and he meets basically the gremlins who explain what's going on. And there's the mad doctor doing stuff, trying to steal Oswald's or Mickey's
Well,
heart.
Mickey's heart. Yeah.
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 So
And
you
then
want to take over from there?
Yeah, sure. And then Oswald saves Mickey, and then basically runs away, and is like, I don't really want to deal with Mickey, and we kind of find out more later. So yeah, basically Mickey, through the help with the gremlin guys, which are nothing like what they sound like if you're just listening to this. They don't look like
Yeah.
gremlins. I guess they're like unused characters from
Yeah, there's a whole thing. They're supposed to have like a feature animated movie and everything, and it just kind of got scrapped.
Which was, a great use for the plot of this. And so basically Mickey goes around to all these different areas, helping these gremlins with various things. But I think this is why it's kind of vague, even though I just played it, because a lot of it I think was a little bit of a stretch. But basically you're following, trying to find Oswald, and then once you find him, you are trying to stop the ink blot guy from getting back to the real world, because at some point he steals Mickey's heart, which allows him to leave the what's the rejected area called? Do you remember?
The Wasteland?
Yeah, whatever this thing's called.
that's the whole place is called the Wasteland.
Okay, yeah. So he can somehow leave the Wasteland with Mickey's heart, and so Mickey's trying to stop him, and so he kind of teams up with Oswald, but Oswald's kind of a prick about it the whole time, and eventually, battles the
little frenemies.
Yeah, and runs through and meets some bosses and other areas, helping people and restoring color and restoring order to this area that he is, as he finds out, is he pretty much ruined everything, and that's basically why Oswald doesn't like him, is that
took
he
his glory.
Took his glory, ruined everything, and so which it makes sense in the story, but it's kind of a bummer. You get to Oswald and you're like, we're gonna be best friends, because in a lot of the photos they're all standing next to each other looking happy, but he's just kind of a jerk to you until the end. And a lot of the characters, a lot of the NPCs just aren't big fans of Mickey, which is cool. Like, it's different. Usually everybody loves Mickey, and
right?
So,
who doesn't like Mickey Mouse? But yeah, it's kind of this resentful,
right?
Yeah.
So here's my only issue with, well, not my only issue. Here's a big issue with this game. They have this whole thing where it's forgotten characters, and I think that's cool. But then they also have this thing of, here's a bunch of things that are run down and like broken, like for instance, Dumbo Elephant Ride from
like
the park.
Lots of stuff.
But that's not really forgotten. That's still a thing.
No, not at all.
And then
I think the idea is that it's supposed to be the scrapped concepts of things that didn't make it into the final version of that.
Like Shmee?
Yeah, I don't know.
So you see what I'm saying, though? It's like,
oh, totally. No, I had that same qualm.
So sometimes
there's figure out what their justification was.
Sometimes they're referencing things, and sometimes they're not. And even some of the concept art, like, are things that didn't make it into the game. I don't know. I just think there wasn't enough references, and maybe somebody would have disagreed with me. But it was like
a little all over the place too.
Right, and it's just like sometimes it was a park, sometimes it was a movie. I mean, Shmee tied in with the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, and Captain Hook was in it or whatever. So I understand it. I guess I was just looking for even more references to things, and a lot of it was references to stuff that a lot of us haven't seen in many years. So it was cool in different ways, and then it kind of misfired. Like, I was looking for more recent stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I think they kind of, and pardon the expression, but I think they painted themselves into a corner because they wanted to do all this forgotten stuff, but then you realize, like, consumer appeal, like, there's a reason that stuff didn't make it into, the parks, or didn't make it into the movies, is because it just wasn't quite as good as the memorable stuff that the consumer does want to see, the things you do know and love. And so it was almost like a catch-22, where it was like, well, if we put this in, we're kind of being true to our vision, but nobody's really going to know what it is or like or care, and it won't have any emotional connection. Or we can put in these things that people know and are familiar, and the music and all that, and it's like, well, okay, then we get that, but we're going against our initial design pitch. So kind of screwed themselves in that regard, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I'm totally with you. I think it was a little conflicting in multiple different ways. It was trying to be its own thing, but it was also trying to make references.
Yeah.
And so I guess I just was left wanting a little bit more. I mean, just even looking at the concept art, we have these like creepy, I forget what they're called. What's the country bears or whatever, from the parks. There's like creepy ones of them where they are like on all fours, but they're robots. And there's like a creepy Mickey one with like sharp claws. And there's, I don't know, there's just like a lot of concept art and I know I keep saying that word, but, so I think I just had more expectations of seeing more things. I think that Mickey graveyard area, whatever it's called, had the most references and called on a lot of things that I thought was pretty cool.
Agreed.
But some of the other areas I felt like were lacking a little bit. So anyway, that has nothing to do with the story. And so, yeah, at the very end, Mickey saves the day, of course. And, but I noticed the closing cutscene is, I think, different based on how you beat the game. I in no way
I think
100% of this. And so, yeah, so, kind of how you tie things up and what they show you in the final, few minutes of the game totally depends on some of the decisions you make, which is cool. But regardless, things go back to normal and Mickey goes home. I think there was a cliffhanger, but honestly, I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't either.
I think I was just mostly relieved to be done at that point. And so, but yeah. And so, yeah, I think at the very end, Mickey is like looking in on, everybody, and Oswald's happy and they're happy. And then at the very end, I think Mickey gets let in, or it somehow kind of sets up that there's going to be the sequel. And so, so what did you think overall of the story? I know we're kind of hitting on it there. I mean,
I like the idea of the story. I thought it was very clever.
Definitely.
The only real issues I have is kind of the setting and their not misuse, but just weird spotty use of known things versus unknown things versus just really weird things.
Right.
So overall, no, I'm a fan of the whole, like, the forgotten Disney and bringing them to the limelight type thing. I thought that was cool.
Like, if somebody came up to you before this game came out or was announced and said, hey, would you play a game where you're Mickey and you go to this like rejected like Disney area,
like alternate Disneyland,
right? And you get to like jump around on all of the broken down rides, and you get to go to all these old cartoons. Like, somebody pitching that to you, it's like, yeah, that sounds super cool.
I would have been like, oh, that's perfect. Like, this, how could this fail?
Right.
But see, what they should have done is, like, there was at the time, and there's a ride for it now, but like the Little Mermaid ride had been fully designed in the 90s and then just abandoned. Like, why wasn't that in the game? Stuff like that.
Totally.
I just feel like that would have been a better use of it.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, overall, probably not the most like captivating story. I think the setup was great, and I think it resolved fine. I just don't think that the story did enough, like midway through, to where it was
true.
It's just kind of like it set you up. It was really good with the setup, and then it just kind of flatlined. And then you got to the end and it was over. So I felt like there wasn't enough movement in it. It was just kind of like, oh, there's a bad guy and he's super bad the whole time. And then, you kind of meet up with Oswald, and that throws a little bit in. And even eventually Mickey admits that he was the one that, caused everything. And so that was some cool, conflict or whatever. It kind of raised the stakes a little bit, but, yeah, just kind of bottomed out a little bit there for me, but still, it had a good enough premise that it worked. So
yeah, totally.
Okay, so that is the story. We're getting close on an hour here. But this is a pretty large game. Like I said, it took me about 11 hours. I would say the first half or 3/4 of the game I thought were pretty strong, even though I did lose interest there a little bit. But overly kind of an easy game, at least at the beginning. A lot of things toward the beginning you could basically pay people off. If you're like, I don't want to go do that thing, I could just give you money or do the easy route, the good and evil thing. And so I was kind of flying through the first half, and then I felt like the last quarter of the game or whatever, maybe just the finale, it felt like it dragged on. It got much more difficult, I thought, and just took me a lot longer. And maybe shame on me for trying to get through it quickly, but only so much time in the day we're trying to get through these games, and so just trying to feel it out. But I don't know. Do you want to just maybe hit on a couple strong levels that we thought were pretty cool, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we'll just kind of brush over some of them. Mean Street, I just want to touch on because it's where you spend a lot of time, and it's kind of the game hub.
Definitely. Well,
it is the game hub because it's where you can take projectors to different areas, and there's the shops to get certain things. It's fine. It's cool. It's like it definitely resembles Disneyland. It's got the train station at the end and City Hall. Then it's got the little shops on each side, and then ends with the partner statue except as we talked about earlier, it's Walt and Oswald. And then the castle, just a little Dark Beauty castle a little bit beyond that you can't actually get back to, I don't think, until later. And then trying to think which other ones really stood out to me. Mickey Junk Mountain, as we mentioned earlier, that one really stood out.
Definitely.
Just some of the cool stuff is like old 50s Mickey Mouse lunchboxes and pin badges and the video games and stuff like that.
Just super fun to run around in and look at everything.
Giant. Yeah. It's not like at scale. It's like that's half the level,
Yeah.
As if you're like an action figure amongst these things. I really liked the Space Mountain one, kind of Space Mountain Tron.
Tomorrow City.
That one, yep. That one was pretty cool visually, and don't remember a whole lot of the gameplay from that because that's one I didn't get to. But
I didn't like that one as much because there's like electric, like track that you energize that helps these vehicles move around, and you have to jump over them, and you just constantly get shocked because the electricity moves really quickly through it. It was just annoying. I thought the boss was really strong on that one, though. In fact, I even made
that one.
His name is Pete Tronic, which is basically Pete in a Tron outfit, and he throws those little Tron discs at you. I don't know. It was cool because in that one, like other parts of the game, you can decide to destroy him or like kind of like befriend him, either thin him or paint on him. And so I was like, all right, for this one, I'm going to try to kind of go the friendly route. And so it was just neat going that route, and at the very end he gives you some upgrade things, and everything's good, everything's fine. And so that was probably the best part about that level was the boss, I think. So
okay, what were some of your favorite levels or boss fights, other stuff?
Well, definitely Mickey Junk was, I think, the coolest part, just because of the video games for me were in there. I think it was one of the Illusion games and the NES Mickey game, I forget what it was called. And then you had Pirates of the Wasteland, which was kind of a mix of Pirates of the Caribbean, Peter Pan, and I think you had like Tortuga and stuff in there. So so that one was pretty cool overall, not terrible. Then you had the Lonesome Manor thing, and that was neat. You kind of went around and you were interacting with the ghosts, and you had to decide whether or not you wanted to scare some of the citizens or encourage them to be brave, I guess. And
that
so
one I thought was a really good mix of the Lonesome Ghost cartoon and then kind of like the Louisiana section, the New Orleans Square at Disneyland and Haunted Mansion. So that was kind of a cool mashup of those two things.
Yeah, and so that one was pretty cool overall. I liked it. And then we got into kind of more the finale part where you hit the it's not written here, but it was it Sleeping Beauty's castle, I think?
Yeah, that's what it's based on.
Right.
And Dark Beauty Castle is what it's called.
Dark Beauty Castle. Yeah. And I didn't like that part as much. It was definitely more difficult, and it's like falling apart basically around you, and you're having to kind of platform and build platforms, and it was definitely challenging. So I'll give it that. The
camera doesn't help. Yeah, in those sections, the camera really doesn't help.
Right. And I just think I felt like every time I was doing it, I felt like the ending of the game was just way too long. It just kept going. There was always another thing and another thing.
Yeah.
And then finally it was over. I was like, thank goodness this is over. Yeah, so that was kind of a little negative there, in my opinion. There's also Oztown, which is Oswald's hometown, which is obviously kind of based off Toontown. And not bad overall in its design. I don't know how accurate it is to the original Toontown or whatever. It's probably just
not super close, just kind of in Warren principle.
Right. So still kind of cool. I think that was where they had the was that where they had the magic carpet ride? Maybe I'm thinking of a different area, but I can't remember. It all kind of blurs together at the time. I don't know. There's so much to this game. There's so much stuff. There's side quests that we haven't even hit on.
Right, lots of side quests
you can do. You don't have to do. A lot of the projectors that you need to get to different levels, you have to have so many of these like power orb things, and so you can't really just plow through the game. You do have to go and do some of these side quests. But then sometimes you can just buy power orbs or whatever they're called and just give them to the guy.
Or just bust one out, like bust a gremlin out of jail, and then you have to go find his wrench. But
right. And that was another thing. Like certain levels would be like, hey, in order to power this thing on to open the door, you need to go paint these 4 things. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I'd find a gremlin and he's like, I can just fix that for you. And then I didn't even have to. And I want to say I think that's really cool. Like I love that.
Yeah, I like the options.
Multiple ways to, proceed or get through a level. There's one where the telephone takes the guy's wrench.
Yeah.
And you can either let the gremlin go into your house and basically kill the phone, or you can like find these like
call boxes, phone box things,
and paint them into existence. And I found 2 of them, but I could not for the life of me find the 3rd one. So eventually I was just like, gremlin, go kill that thing. Like I need to move on.
Wrench. Yep. And it's interesting because it's like he's gone. Your phone is gone after that if you let the gremlin do that.
Right. It's just
so
funny.
Yeah, I like the choices and stuff in that regard. Yeah. It's kind of dark. I think the last thing we really haven't touched on is the main mechanics, like of the painting and thing. I mean, we've briefly touched on it, but I just want to say, like, one of the bigger annoyances or disappointments is that the things you can or can't paint are predetermined, and it's like things that are literally the part of the same object. It's like this face of the wall can be painted or thinned, but this one can't. It just doesn't really follow any logic or make any sense, and it's really annoying when you want to be able to do something and you can't, based on the rules that the game has laid for you. So there's some cool puzzles related to it where it's like you'll have a pile of rocks blocking your way, and so you can dissolve the floor and then put the floor back after they've fallen, and like take the gears out of a spinning platform so that it'll stop, and then put them back in to like raise you higher. A lot of cool environmental puzzles with the mechanic, but just a little underdeveloped, I think, probably because of the system limitation with the Wii and how much that would really take to make the entire environment, plus how much you could like kind of screw yourself and just get on the floor or something. But just a little something. I don't know. Anything else in the levels or that mechanic?
I guess we should probably hit on the combat too real quick. Obviously, you can use the paint and the thinner in the combat. You can literally use enough thinner that the character just like dissolves or dies or whatever.
Very like Who Framed Roger Rabbit kind of.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Kind of an acid or something. I don't know. And then your other option is to paint them, which turns them friendly and helps you basically. Helps you fight.
They'll take out other enemies, but mostly I use them as distractions so I can then try and possess the next enemy.
Right. And then on top of that, you can also shake the Wiimote to have Mickey do this like spin attack, which won't really kill the enemies.
It's like a stunner.
Right.
Break them up.
Pretty much useless outside of like breaking items or breaking barrels and things that have items. And so and it's 2017. I don't really like sitting at home having to shake my Wiimote while I'm sitting on my couch. I feel like a child, but whatever. It is what it is. It's a Wii game.
Waggle.
So got to do some waggling. Other than that, the controls I feel like are pretty, they work fine. You got to have the nunchuck to help you move around. Camera, I know a lot of people weren't a big fan of the camera in this game.
I hate the camera in this game.
Do you?
Yep.
I don't despise it. There were a couple times where it annoyed me, but overall I didn't think it was super distracting, but I could see why a lot of people didn't like it.
Yeah. I'm curious how it is in the second one with the Wii remote, not like the Pro Controller on the Wii U.
Right.
I'm very curious when we talk about that. Because with the 360, like you got full control with the right stick, and that changed the game.
Well, I don't know if I want to play with the Wii. I'd rather play with the gamepad.
Okay. Well, then in that regard, it'll probably be almost the same as the 360 experience. Yeah. At
Maybe
least
I'll
give
try
it a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that an option? Do you know? I don't even know.
I'm pretty sure that's why they released it on the Wii U.
Okay.
Just so that they could have it. Because I don't think, did the second one originally come out on the Wii? Or was it just like a ugly version?
That's a great question. I honestly don't know.
Yeah. We'll have to get more into that when we cover that game.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
any other?
I'm pretty sure it did actually. Now that I'm thinking about it. Anyway, no. Anything? No, not from me.
Okay.
I think I've brought up every point I've had.
Yes.
Okay, real quick. The platforming for me is a little too loose and floaty, which I've noticed that you tend to prefer that.
Yeah.
In games, so it's not terrible. It's just for me, it's not quite precise enough or tight enough. It's hard to articulate, and it comes down to personal preference. It's not broken by any means.
Right. Epic Mickey 2 did come out on PlayStation 3, Wii, Xbox 360, Wii U, Microsoft Windows, and PlayStation Vita. So
well, there we go.
You were right.
Yeah, I think the Wii U one was meant to be kind of the definitive one where you could use the pointer controls but have the HD 360 look of it. I'd be curious to kind of see how that comes and looks and all that. So, cool.
Fingers crossed. All right.
Indeed.
Well, with that, I mean, I'm sure there's like a ton of things we've missed here.
There's a lot, yeah.
But we try not to be too structured here. We kind of just want to let things flow naturally and just whatever comes to mind.
Talk about the things that were most important or stood out to us. Yeah,
definitely. Yep. So with that, we're going to head into our final part here where we just close out with our final thoughts. All right, Jeph, what are your overall final thoughts, last words? What do you think of this game? What do you want everyone to know on your thoughts with this game?
I would try to summarize it as a wonderful game that falls a little bit short in a few key areas, but is overall and genuinely a good experience. And it's especially as a Disney fan, there's a lot of fan service, and the game is not broken by any means. So if I was rating it, I would give it like an 8 out of 10 or a 4 out of 5. So yeah. It's a good game, not quite great. Maybe that's a grade on IGN scale. I don't know, but it's a good game.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's got a really cool aesthetic, a cool art style, cool idea going. I do think it does get a little boring, maybe midway through.
Yeah.
So I suggest just kind of powering through. There's a lot here. You could spend a lot of hours trying to 100% this game, and maybe to some people that's fun, and that's totally cool. But I found for me just trying to kind of keep pushing through and getting to new areas was probably for the best. I think this game works well for the most part. I think if you're looking for a video game that has a lot of Disney references, I would go with the Kingdom Hearts route before I would go this route. But I still think it's a unique game. It was a Wii exclusive, which is pretty cool. So it has a good story to it, like just the backstory and get the fact that it was a true
passion project. Yeah, and it shows
totally. And if you're looking for a cool Wii game and you haven't played this, I think it's worth checking out. I don't know how many Wii fans are out there still to this day, and if so, you've probably played this. If you're just a big Mickey gamer and you like all the Mickey games, I think this is definitely worth checking out as a fan of Mickey Mouse. You can't go wrong. But who's not a fan of Mickey Mouse? That's right. I'm trying to think. I think overall that's kind of it. It's fun. I didn't I definitely didn't hate it. I enjoyed it. There were a couple parts where I was just like really frustrated and wished the game would be over. But at the end of the day, I'm glad that I finished it, and I'm interested to see what comes next with Epic Mickey 2.
Indeed.
That being said, we decided next month, we are going to be looking at the sequel. Why not just go ahead and move on to Epic Mickey 2 while, the first game is fresh, and just take a look and see, what this one's all about. I have no idea what this one's like. I know there's some co-op involved, and other than that, I don't know if it has been received any better or if it's worse. So I'm going in completely blind. So definitely come back next month for our next episode where we will be taking a look at that. Lastly, before we close out here, just a bit of housekeeping for those of you who have been following us maybe since the beginning. We are in the process of changing our hosting through, what website we're using and all of that. So please bear with us. Hopefully, as we get this episode out there, we'll kind of get all of that stuff resolved. We will definitely still be up on YouTube. I know a lot of people don't necessarily listen to podcasts on there, but we will have it available there. We'll have a new YouTube for all of our episodes that will be live with this
dedicated
one.
YouTube.
Yes. And then we're working on iTunes as well, so that should be following. And until then, you can follow us on social media. We are on Twitter at mouse_bytes. And I'll also be adding some
Bytes with a Y.
Yes, BYTES. And then I'll hopefully be making a Facebook page here eventually, and you will be able to find all this there. And but for now on Twitter, so you'll see once we get things updated and a little more on track, you'll be able to find out all that information there. Did I miss anything, Jeph?
Nope, I think that sums it up.
Yeah, so we're just transitioning a little bit, but the show will continue, and we are going to be looking to do more in the future. So until then, thank you so much for joining us. I know this is a bit of a longer episode for us, but it's definitely the biggest game that we've reviewed so far, and so more to come in the future. And thanks for listening. Thanks for staying with us. Until next time, I'm Clay. That's Jeph. And go play some Disney games.
Talk to you later, Mouseketeers.
Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, check out some of our other videos, and visit thenintendovillage.com, your home for everything Nintendo.